All right, time to get started. Live on Facebook. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Mary. Hello. Awesome, awesome. Very nice to have you on here, Mary. Most excellent, most excellent. That is exciting. I'm just starting it on the live on Facebook since it's right on the time. It always takes a little time to set up. Mary, I'm not hearing you. There you are. There you are. Brilliant.
There I am.
Brilliant.
How are you?
I'm really well, Mary. How about you?
I'm fantastic.
Excellent. It's nice to hear you and nice to chat to you. Love that you come on the Zoom. It's brilliant. Actually, give me 1 second. I had to put the halogen light on, otherwise I tend to fade in and out like that. It's just wild, you know. It's strange if there's not enough light that happens. So, and you see my wizard energy, you see.
There you go.
Who's that? Brilliant. Hey Donna. Hello. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Excellent. I'm just in the process of setting it up. Hello, Donna. Hello. I'm just in the process of setting it up on Facebook. It always takes a little while. It's kind of slowish. So just, you have to connect and connect again. It's all there. So, yep. Come on, Bina. I'm assuming you're going to join too. Just looking at the message here. Okay. We'll get going in a second. But let me ask you before we get going, Mary, Donna, is there anything in particular that's kind of in your heart, in your mind, you've been thinking about that, that's just before you came and joined, that was there in you, that's sitting there? Just, I don't know. It's always interesting to connect to what's going on inside someone, and then it seems to always have relevance and pertinence to what we do going forward. Mary?
Yep, I'm here.
So I'm saying anything that you've been thinking about, that's kind of been on your mind, anything just that you've been considering, just contemplating.
Well, I did buy the book for a friend of mine.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah, who really needs a different perspective on how they've been thinking.
Gotcha.
So I'm hoping that it does them some good.
Yes. Oh, it will. We've dealt with a lot of people that have been dealing with this issue, and it comes up in so many different ways, and inevitably it's a really big deal for them. They find some resolution, because if we don't understand, then we struggle. Once we understand, then we can make peace with things, and that's the
I think my friend's kind of stuck in a bubble, has been for a long time about it.
Right. And bubble awareness, that's a big part. All right. So here we go. All right. So that's one part set up. I see the live, and just like it so everybody sees, so I can see comments as they come in. But it's much easier to just comment, on the Zoom, which is why I set this up, because the live, the comments are a little bit delayed, and one doesn't always see them. So, all right, let me. There we go. Get the book up, and we were last on chapter 3 still. How about you, Donna? What you been thinking about? I know lots of stuff, but
It's all good.
You good? Brilliant. I gotta just find the spot. It was there by the. We stopped last week in chapter 3 uh, by the cartoon, right, Donna?
I don't
That's
remember.
that's what I remember. Okay, narcissism. Yeah, here we go. All right,
Yep.
everyone. That insisting on self-honesty makes narcissism impossible. Yep. Okay, so here we go. Let me do the screen share. Get sorted. It just fascinates me how much rigmarole there is to the Facebook lives. You would think, by now Facebook has got this all sorted, and it's all smooth and fluid and it's quick and easy, but I guess it's complicated technology. So, all right. So you guys can see the screen fine, right? You can see the cartoon?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So just to start here, look, we both agree that change is necessary to keep a relationship fresh. I'm going to do everything in my power to help and support you as you try to become more like me. Uh, that's so typical of the narcissist. It's like even when they try and help or think they're helping or pretend to help, it's always all about them. So pretty amazing. All right, so we'll just get right into it. Agendas and beliefs. So this chapter, again, just to recapitulate, it's about deep-seated causality. That's the name of the chapter, and we're going to go into the deep underlying things. And we looked last week at a couple of the points already. It was about narcissism and also about conceit, how their conceit really corrupts them so profoundly. So now we're going into agendas and beliefs. Corrupt agendas and motivations lead to distorted perspectives, to inappropriate perceptions and behaviors. Lacking independence of being easily makes one inadvertently complicit via default unawareness and opens otherwise good people to manipulation and abuse. So the quote that we're starting this section with, it's very profound because it's really saying, hey, you know what? If we're not aware, if we don't understand, if we don't have independence of being, we can be inadvertently complicit and to their nonsense, and that's not good. And it opens us up to manipulation and abuse. So we have to understand that it's not just about being aware of what's going on with them. We also have to develop our independence of being. If we're not able to essentially stand up for ourselves and to claim ourselves, to think for ourselves, then we basically become part of the deal. And that's no good at all. So we'll go into it and we'll explain. So much as the bullshitter is governed by their distorted agendas and goals, we too have to pay attention to our own inner state. We may only have a fraction of this corruption, but for the bullshitter, that little is enough. Their intimate acquaintance with their own distortions and bullshit makes them hyper aware of the same in others. The difference is in good people. That bit of bullshit is a shame and something good people aren't proud of and certainly don't want exposed. They will deal with their own failings by themselves. To the BMN in particular, this is a gaping doorway to manipulation and exploitation. We thus have to look at our own deep-seated beliefs, which are the causality of our own behaviors. If we pay attention, we will see we hold some beliefs which lead to motivations we can't really justify. A deep personal matter, something that's part of being human, and the constant learning and growing, which is life. All right. So just to kind of put that in a little bit of a different perspective, to say, part of learning and growing is being aware that there's stuff in us that we want to change. Now, as earnest, good people, we tend to feel a little bit ashamed or guilty of that stuff, but we have to make peace with our own nincompoopry, as we say so regularly, right, Mary?
Yep. Yep.
and Donna. So that's key, because if we do actually hold on to that bit of shame and guilt, which is inappropriate, really. It's like, man, how can you feel ashamed about being a bit of a knucklehead? It's part of learning. We have to make peace with that. Yes, it bothers our goodness, but we have to understand it's part of learning. As we become more aware, we're going to be more aware of our nonsense. It's just part of the deal. If we don't
Yes.
make peace of it, if we try and hide it, the manipulators and the bullshitters are going to see it, and they're going to use that against you because you don't want it exposed. And they say, there's a pressure point, and they're going to leverage that pressure point. Very big deal.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah,
So,
it's taking responsibility for one's own actions, really.
exactly. And it's also taking responsibility for our own nincompoopery.
Yep.
That's very key. We don't want to be nincompoops, but we have to accept that that's just part of the deal. We have to make peace of it and learn to laugh at our nincompoopery. It's why we like that word, because it's an inherently humorous word. And so it's very powerful. So our next quote here is, none so easy to deceive as those so desperately willing to believe. None so easy to deceive as those so desperately willing to believe. That's huge. We see this in our political climate right now, that there are many people who are being deceived because they are desperately willing to believe. So this is a big deal. And when we say, hey, in relationships, we're desperately willing to believe. We want to believe the person is good. We want to believe they're nice. We want to believe they are soulmate. We want to believe that we can change them. We want to believe all of this stuff. And that makes us easy to deceive when we're desperately willing to believe. Donna, that just, just feels to me like that's something that connects on a deep level there. You don't have to say anything. I just feel it, Its relevance here is that these personal flaws, and especially if they are indulgences, when we knowingly engage in what we personally believe isn't good and wrong, these personal transgressions against ourselves make a huge difference when dealing with bullshitters and BMNs. They will actively look for these flaws in us and look to exploit them. We have to be extra vigilant of ourselves and our motives and beliefs when dealing with bullshit. We simply need to look at people misled by bullshit promises. Inevitably, it's their desperation for that promise to be fulfilled which causes them to swallow the bullshit. Why? Because they don't want to deal with their own inner distorted reasons for wanting the shortcut. They don't want to make the effort to learn, to investigate, to research, to check. Or they want something which isn't easily justifiable, like a racist motive or personal greed. Their own deep-seated misbeliefs make them vulnerable to bullshit and to being misled and exploited. They thus led astray by their own narcissism and false beliefs. Now, this is not this last section here. It very much applies when we look in today's political climate and we see people who are being grossly misled by gross bullshit, and that applies to them. It doesn't apply to the typical reader of the book because it's a gross exaggeration, and once again, it's the mechanism that's an underlying theme. When we look at the gross distortions, the excess, it's easier to see the subtle and the nuanced within us. That tiny little bit that's kind of below our awareness, where we're doing just that teeny little bit of it in ourselves. But when we see the grossness, we get to recognize it. We say, excuse me, I have a little bit of that in myself. And that helps us. So, dang it. Some cooking smoke. Anyway, so when we see it in others, we see the gross distortions. We get to recognize that little bit in ourselves. So the key point I want to make here is not to get kind of misled and become distorted within ourselves to say, oh, I'm just like that, and to see and to think that that excess applies to us. Typically, earnest good people, they tend to over-exaggerate their bad qualities and they minimize or even completely ignore their good qualities. And part of what we want to do in the book is to reverse that. We have to emphasize our good qualities and absolutely minimize and realize that our crappiness, our nincompoopery isn't really a big deal. When we look at ourselves in true proportion and an honest, real honest assessment, we cannot help but say that we are predominantly good and sensible. Yes, we can be knuckleheads and nincompoops every now and then, but it's small compared to the whole. And that balance we need to shift. Because if we don't, we then basically are saying to the world and to the nincompoops and all that, hey, but you know what, I'm nothing, I'm horrible, I'm crap and all this. And they buy, and then you become part of this whole system where you allow the bullshitter in their bullshit to say, oh, I'm fantastic, I'm wonderful. And then they join, they run away with that, and it's a distortion. So it's about setting the balance right to say, no, we've got to insist honestly that, hey, I'm a good person, I'm not a bullshitter, and to say it and to be able to say it and to say it with ease and to claim our goodness. Hey, hi, Ryan. Brilliant, man. Brilliant, brilliant. You're welcome to join on, oh, thank you, Ryan. You're welcome to come join us on Zoom as well if you like. Anyone, basically, you're all free to join on Zoom. Instead of typing the comments, on Zoom, you can say them out loud. So I enjoy the discussion on it's nice to hear stuff that comes up. So this is a big point. And so when a bullshitter sees that you have some kind of a botheration or a guilt, they're going to pressure you on that. They're going to say, hey, you know what? If you have something that you can't really justify or feel like, and now I'm talking about people who are a little bit more gross, that are somewhat bullshitters themselves, they get misled by other bullshitters. It's quite fantastic. It's just quite amazing how it works. And again, if we look at the political climate now, I don't want to be too specific about that, but you see people who are doing the same thing in their own lives, and they become victims of the super chief bullshitter in chief. It's just astonishing how that works, because they are desperate. They are desperate to believe. They are desperate to believe their own rubbish. So they get misled as well. All right. So reading on. Hey, Ryan, how are you, man? How are you?
I'm doing good.
Excellent. Glad you're here. So I have a feeling that this part that we're on now, it's very applicable in a lot of aspects in your life, Ryan. So you just pipe up when it comes. So yeah. So we were basically saying the previous quote here is a very powerful quote. I want to read it again. None so easy to deceive as those so desperately willing to believe. It's just such a huge quote, and we see it in so many aspects. When we're desperately willing to believe, then we are easily deceived, and not just by others, but by ourselves also.
Right.
So this is a very big deal. Again, the book isn't just about understanding bullshit. It's about self-discovery and self-growth and self-learning. We are using the grossness of the bullshitter because they're so excessive, they're so in your face, they're so obvious. So they make all this nonsense really easy to see, because sometimes when it's very small inside us, it's difficult to see. So we are using them for self-growth.
Okay. Yeah.
Very powerful. All right. So going on to our next quote here. Achieving a bullshit goal cannot result in satisfaction. Attaining a flawed ambition only ends in loss of hope. And that's huge. That's the thing with the bullshitters, that they don't realize that they pursue this idea that they can shortcut, they can cheat their way to getting their goals. And you can't. It's just absolutely cannot work. So when you achieve that flawed ambition, you lose hope in your ambitions. You start to say, well, my ambitions are crap, and that leads to that loss of hope. Because if you don't have ambitions or aspirations, ambition, we've used the word here because it's applying to the kind of world in general. But, more specifically, like in what we would use, we'd say rather our aspirations or our intents. But if we achieve a flawed intent or a flawed aspiration, it obviously can't work because it's flawed. And then we start to think, well, maybe it's not possible to achieve my ambitions, my aspirations, my intents. And that's where the loss of hope comes from. So this is a very big deal. So bullshit is very costly. And you see that in bullshitters. They really, they perpetuate this bullshit because they have that loss of hope. Our own beliefs and agendas are often subtly influenced and affected without any action by ourselves. Paying attention to convention soon reveals what we simply assume to be valid, what we've adopted just because it's commonly believed, not because we ourselves specifically and deliberately believe what we've assimilated. All too often, unfortunately, the agendas of convention are bullshit. A bullshit we don't always spot unless we purposely look with awareness and understanding. Bullshitters are handy for identifying these bullshit beliefs, especially those of convention, as they're attuned to what's popular and to what they believe most people value, adopting these beliefs and ambitions as a means to obtain approval, typically exaggerating such assumed ideas. Useful for us when it comes to identifying this particular and subtle form of bullshit. So we can just look at what's of importance to the bullshitter, what they emphasize, what they focus on. They do what is they think is commonly the convention, and then we can get to a clue as to what is stuff that may be assimilated in us. Like, for instance, getting shine and getting attention and saying, hey, you know what, popularity, all of the stuff. Yes, those are obvious, but if we look a little bit at the bullshitters and the preciseness of their particular bullshit, we get to see things that, like being, say, snarky. That's like one particular form, like lately that's become this a cool thing, right? So they try and push this snarky vibe. But snarky is just being mean in a more cool way, or a less obviously mean way. It's still bullshit, really. So we get to see the subtleties. Just because you've made snarky cool doesn't make it any less mean. It's still meanness. It's still a put down. It's still hierarchy. It's still superiority. It's still the bullshit of people in general. Yeah. Anything, Mary? Just before we carry on.
Yeah, it just reminds me of the know-it-all in my life.
Brilliant. There you go.
You know?
Exactly. Now, through the bullshitters, that's key that you bring that up. We see how they emphasize being a know-it-all. They make it so gross and egregious. But, sometimes we might have a little bit of that in ourselves and say, you know what? That's a bullshit nonsense. I have to get away from that. Not knowing.
But this person is also a button pusher. They know where to get you.
Exactly.
Just make that that comment, and you go, what did you just say to me? Like, really?
Right. That's the magic and the gift of the bullshitters, is that they are profound, phenomenal button pushers. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So
I shake my head all the time when I'm around that person, and thank God I don't see them a lot. But when I do see them, it's like I don't want to be in the same space.
Gotcha. Exactly. And also, though, if we can find a way to say, you know what, why are my buttons being pushed? I got to make peace with this stuff. So whatever it is that they're pushing your buttons on, if we can make peace with that, then we rob them of their power. We deprive them of the ability to push our buttons, and that is how we acquire independence of being. So the bullshitters, I'll come to you in 1 second, Ryan. The bullshitters are really awesome in that respect when it comes to self-awareness and self-improvement and self-discovery. It's huge.
Yeah, well, it took me a long time to say, stop.
Right.
You don't need to be pushing no reason to be pushing my buttons. I don't live with you. Yeah, I know somebody that I care about that you live with, but I'm not the cause of your issue. So just stop pushing my buttons.
Excellent. So they led you to assert yourself and to assert your independence of being. It's profound. It's really profound.
Yeah, because I didn't for a long time, because I said, you know what, I'm not going to rock the boat for the person that I care about in that relationship.
Right there. That I don't want to rock the boat. Now, not just for the person, but just in general. This is where earnest, good people become complicit to bullshit, because they don't want to rock the boat. They're nice. They want to keep things smooth and pleasant and happy. They don't want to cause stress and bother and drama. But the bullshitters use that exactly to manipulate you. They
create the drama.
Right. So they know that you're unwilling to cause drama, and so you basically just kind of hold your peace and you let them do their thing. But at some point, we have to speak up and say, no, I'm willing to cause drama if necessary, because this is bullshit and this is crap and it's nonsense, and I'm not going to be a party to it. And once they know you're willing to do that, they lose their power over you.
Yeah. Well, they say goodnight. That's what they do. They leave the room and say goodnight. I'm going to bed. Bye.
Exactly. They cannot be in a situation with those who are aware they are bullshitting and who are not accepting and tolerant of the bullshit. And Olivia has a very powerful point that she repeats often. You've probably seen it in her post. She says, we have to develop appropriate intolerance.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is appropriate to be intolerant. Society is pushing us to say, be tolerant, be tolerant, be tolerant. And yes, it is important. It is important to be tolerant. But there are times, like with bullshitters, that we need to be appropriately intolerant. Very important.
Yep.
Very, very powerful. Ryan, share away.
It just made me think of a situation that I dealt with last weekend that I shared about with the gentleman, the job site I was working at.
Right. That was a powerful circumstance.
And it made me, when she was talking, Mary was speaking, it made me think capital D diplomacy just popped into my head. And like what she was saying about, oh, they'll just go away or this or that. Yes, that's like one option. But I experienced when I was being diplomatic in a situation with a bullshitter, that I converted them from my enemy to one of my closest allies within 10 minutes. Okay.
Wow.
It was magic to see it happen in front of my eyes. It was a magical thing because I've never experienced that in my life. Because I've always been what you would call like a nice guy. Like I want to help people. I want to be nice. And you know what I mean? I didn't want to ever cause problems. I always wanted peace. But these bullshitters in my life had to teach me how to stand up for myself and how to say no and this and that. And when I did it, like Sil talks about, when I was diplomatic in that way, it was amazing to see the magic of it. And literally today I communicated with the same guy, and his attitude is a 180. Now he's like, oh man, I appreciate you guys so much. You guys are so understanding of the situation. Like literally he was going from like wanting to sue me and like take me to court and saying the worst things possible to now he's like praising me.
That's huge.
That's amazing.
Huge.
It was huge.
And look what you did though, Ryan. Beside the capital D diplomacy, you actively and deliberately and with conscious awareness exercised your independence of being and your impeccability of self. Your good character. You put it into place. You didn't let the meanness get to you. You didn't come to nastiness. You didn't respond with counter, like being a clever response, a quick comeback, and a put down. None of that shit. You just held to your goodness and you insisted on it.
Because what's interesting, it's not necessary to be mean. Actually, it's counterproductive. It's counterproductive to be nasty back.
Exactly.
They draw you into their little web.
Right.
And they get caught up in
right.
it.
Right. Ryan, the key point though is you did something else. Because yes, and we're on this point of not wanting to cause drama. Right? And people like that willingness to not cause trouble and to cause problem, that's what gets exploited. Now, in your case, you didn't say, I'm going to cause drama by standing up myself. But essentially, you in a way sort of did cause drama, but in a nice way. What you did that's really profound is that you said, well, wait a second. I'm not just going to agree to this idea of that you're pushing. That you held your ground, said, no, I can't accept responsibility for it. I can't say, you accusing me of something, and I have to say, no, it's not me. And you stood firm, but you stood firm in a positive, nice way, in a good way. But you still stood firm, right?
Right.
And that's the key. You exercised your independence of being. You said, no, I'm not going to accept what you're pushing at me. I'm not going to push back in the same way, in a nasty way, but I'm holding my ground and I'm going to be very firm in being positive, in being good, and insisting on what is the truth, not bullshit.
What's interesting.
Very powerful. Excuse me 1 sec, Ryan. I just want to say hello to Shisha. And Shisha, I want to come to your comment in a moment. So I just want to finish this. So we're going to get there to Shisha in a second. Go ahead, Ryan.
It just, I just want to let everybody know that I've been impeccable in the past and I didn't realize it until now. But when I look back, I realized, I was being impeccable, but I had a lot of backlash for it. Like I've had people say a lot of nasty things about me and a lot of false accusations. Like I've had people go on the internet go that far and post things publicly about me that were nasty and things that weren't true, obviously.
Yep.
And family members and friends doing these things.
Right.
So
right.
when you're being impeccable and people are saying nasty things about you, don't even worry about it. Like, it's not even a big deal. Actually, you know what? The fact that you have developed people that hate you is a good sign.
In a cockeyed way.
Yeah. If you can see it that way, they're only hating you because they're not you, and they want to be you, but something in them just can't get there. And so they get angry because they see the potential that they could be, and they're not that. So it makes them like feel so bad. Like Sil said, it makes them feel they're comparing themselves with you when you're around.
Right. So we're going to get to that. Sorry, you that comparative mindset. Just hold that right there, Ryan. We are going to get to that later on in the book. It's a big point.
I'm just saying, we're coming into a time now, God is telling me, the universe, my spirit is saying, listen to all the impeccable people, to all the meek people and the humble people. Our time to rise and our time to shine is now. Like, it's happening. It's coming. We've been at the bottom. But it says the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And honestly, I can say with 100% confidence that we're coming into a new age and a new world where this reality is going to become true.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal because we're getting to a point where good people are starting to realize that self-appreciation is an act of honesty. And you cannot not self-appreciate and be honest at the same time.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
And that one simple shift is huge.
It's big. It's really big.
It's massively huge.
Anyways, that's all I want to say.
No, it's fantastic. It's brilliant. So Shisha says, or said earlier, I want to get to Shisha. I'm trying to heal from the harm of developing in the presence and under the authority of BS people while growing up. Yes, Donna, Shisha, that is a big part of where we at. And this is why the book is there, because it's such a profound influence. But when we understand it, we can recognize, especially when those influences were early on, we can recognize the nonsense that's underlying it, and then we can be aware of it, and that's how we can undo it and shift it and replace it with something else. Being corrected is interpreted as criticism. Yes. So that's the thing, though. And this is a big point. One of the ways we can do this, and Ryan dealt with capital D diplomacy. Part of capital D diplomacy is unhooking from the idea of right and wrong. Take those words out of your vocabulary. And the same thing with agree and disagree. Take them out of your vocabulary. Throw them away. Instead of right and wrong, use appropriate or inappropriate, for instance. And instead of agree and disagree, focus on understanding. Agree and disagree is a polarity, and that it automatically brings this idea of right and wrong into it. But when we shift to understanding, that also connects us to appropriateness. And when we understand both, we realize that, hey, you know what? There isn't specifically a right and wrong. It depends on the situation and the circumstance, depends on what you're trying to do, what the circumstances are, what your motivations are. So different things are appropriate in different situations. And then we can come to an understanding of and have that in our discussions, our interactions. It changes. We don't end up in these battles of right-wrong battles, agree-disagree battles. They're wastes of time. They end up in a winner and a loser. So much the bullshitters are so predicated on winning, and we're going to get to it later on in the book. But winning, it means if I'm a winner, I'm forcing somebody else to be a loser. Me personally, I don't want any part of that. Thank you very much. I don't want to make anybody a loser. I have no interest in that.
No, I don't think they get. It's just so unacceptable, the behavior that they exhibit around other people. They're in their own negative bubble.
Right. And this is what we're looking at now, the deep-seated causality. In the same way, Shisha, as you were influenced by them, right? And you didn't buy into it. The problem is for most bullshitters, they too grew up in a bullshit environment and had bullshitters pressuring them. And they bought into it though. So that's the deeper problem. And our compassion from an aware point of view is to say, hey, wait a second. It's the point that you were talking about the other day, Ryan, is that these people are in their own cockeyed way. They think being a bullshitter is good. That's what they've been taught they're supposed to do, what they should do. That's how you get ahead in the world. That's what makes you good, is by putting others down, that pushes you up. They've been taught this is the right thing to do. So their values are distorted.
I think they become the people that they despise the most in their life.
Exactly. There's that too. It's a tragic situation, but they're trying to do the inappropriate thing, because they think that's what they don't have any other clue of what to do. They believe this is the only way to be. It's like a dog-eat-dog world out there. And if you don't push people down, if you don't screw them first, they're going to screw you. And all of this kind of crap logic, you know, that insecureness and fear and insecurity and emptiness and lack of self-independence and all of this stuff, it all comes from there. But they think they should be that way, and it causes them to be utter idiots. It's really sad.
It is. It is sad.
It feels a bit uncomfortable with the they versus us, because I feel like we all have the capacity to be this.
Yes.
So I just, with the conversation, I'm feeling a little need to just make sure for myself that I'm not being too critical of myself and saying that I am a narcissistic bullshitter, but also being aware of the fact that I do have the capacity to have these types of characteristics within myself. And so it's the we, not the them versus us.
Right. Instead of saying you, it's we. Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you, Donna. And yes, I know I've been using that language, and I'm so pleased you make this point. It's difficult because it's just the way language works to say it in other way. I mean, otherwise I have to say we in the totality, and it's a sliding scale. Now, some are a little bit more on one side of that scale and some on the other side, and we all fall on it, and sometimes we can be on one end and move to the other end. It does vary. It's just the nature of the language, but I'm so pleased you make that point, because I don't care for it very much either.
Well, I just want to bring it to my awareness. I'm not sure.
Right.
No,
it's really important.
How anybody else felt about it. It just
that's
my awareness.
No, that's spot on. You know, I talk about somebody that's very extreme in that behavior in my life.
Right.
You know, and I know that I've got bits of, like, I can be judgy here or there with somebody, and I don't like that part of me.
Right.
I don't like it.
Too.
Because I know, I know inside I am really a very kind and compassionate person.
Exactly.
So that's when I see the extreme, it gets to me.
Exactly. And that's the point of the book. That's the point that we make, Donna, is to say that, hey, you know what? We are all on the spectrum. That when we look at the extreme, we get to recognize it in ourselves, the subtle in ourselves. Now, sometimes, and especially in the past, we might have actually been an extreme ourselves. I know certainly there's been points in my life where I've just been a complete idiot and a total jackass, you know. So it's definitely, there is a part of us. So to say the we and the them, it is actually not accurate, but it's something that we are using for purposes of convenience. But keep reminding us about this point, Donna, that yes, it's a spectrum, and that we are seen in the excess, we see in ourselves. Sometimes we might even be the excess ourselves. But that's the key point. We have to also realize that not just in ourselves, our goodness is the core. And even in the bullshitters, they are fundamentally at the very, very bottom, despite all of the rubbish. They are still actually motivated by goodness, because they think doing bullshit is a good thing to do. So they're still at root motivated by goodness. And when we see that, it allows for a profound shift of perception. Now we come to a deep, deep understanding, and it's massively transformative. A very big deal. But yeah, I agree with you, Donna, that us and them, we and them, it's not a mindset. It's a mindset of opposites and extremes and battle. And no, we want to get away from. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a huge, huge point. Very big deal.
Yeah. When you point at someone and say you, I don't think you is not really a good word to use either. Saying you should probably use someone's name or something like that. But I don't know if we is necessarily bad in the context where we're saying we. Wow. Like I say we, or even if I'm referring to myself, I don't even want to refer to myself as I, because that's an ego term. I is the ego. So just say we, because I'm a multiple of things.
Exactly.
I agree.
I'm not just one thing. I'm a lot of different things.
And also, I am you, Ryan. You are me. I am you, Donna. Yes. I am you, Mary. You are me. We are all each other. Right. But actually, that's where I like you, Ryan, because you as in Y-O-U, but also you as in just the letter U, which stands for the universe. And when I say you, to me, I actually always mean you, the you, as in universe, because that you and we're all the universe. We're all aspects of each other. We're all just a variation of the greatness which we are being expressed in these different formats.
That's why they say there's no I in team.
Exactly. Right. And there's no I in universe either. I mean, in you. There is in universe, but not in you.
Right.
So that's the thing. The universe does incorporate the I, but it's greater than that. So that's very nice. Yeah. And that's the thing, though. When we start to see everyone as just a different expression of a particular aspect of the universe, you say, "Oh, there's me, but just in a different way." Right. So I could have gone that path, but I didn't. I'm on this one. So okay. That's how we learn. We learn from seeing the other aspects of ourselves. So when we look at somebody like a BMN, it's an act of self-awareness.
Right.
It's awareness of possibilities of being. Right. And since we're the universe, when we look at it from the universe's eyes, I'm being aware of my possibilities of being. And that's the issue. That's the bigger issue, the overriding issue that's really, really of concern. It's to become aware of what is possible and what's out there. It's not that we can't just ignore the stuff because it's crappy. No, we need to be aware of it because it is us and we have that capability. Now, we might not be the particular BMN here, but in the greater overall, as the universe, we are expressing that way through the BMN, and we get to see, it has appropriateness in some circumstances, like pushing Mary's buttons. It's appropriate because, hey, if your buttons didn't get pushed, you don't learn and grow. But also it's appropriate in terms of nastiness and meaning and meanness and all the other negativity. So we get to see, hey, yes, it works, but there are better ways of doing things. And so we learn and grow as our deep self, which is the universe. Pretty huge, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Donna, does that settle or balance the point that you were making?
It does perfectly.
Okay. Because that's really important, and I'm so thrilled that you articulated that. Because yes, sometimes with language we kind of forced to use conventionality of language, which can, by implication, lead to profound problems, like you pointed out with the us and them thing. And we don't want that. We are them also, and we have to be aware of that. They are us.
Right. It was through implications kind of creeping up on me. And so I just wanted to express it so I could get my head right.
and what I'm loving is that you did express it. That's precisely what we want to get at in our greaterness, on a longer term basis of discussion and in the group. It's precisely that. When something's pressing on us inside, we've got to express it, because we're saying, you know what, I can't reconcile this. I have to balance this. I have to make peace with this. Our impeccability demands that we say and speak up. And that's exactly what we were talking about. What you did, Donna, is precisely what we need to do when it comes to bullshit. You didn't call me out and say, hey, Sil, you know what? You're talking about some crap. And you know what? Actually, what you're saying is causing... You said it from a point of personal resolution to say, you know what? For me personally, this is something that causes me a problem. Right? You didn't say, oh, you're wrong, you bad, I disagree with you. Not. It was, and you were saying it from the purpose and the intent of coming to understanding about it. Yes?
Yes.
Right.
That's correct.
Right. So I'm just expressing that when we're talking about agree, disagree, right or wrong, you didn't come from that point, but you made your point. You're clear. You asserted your independence of being, and you expressed it as something. Say, hey, this is important to me personally. And that's all we can do. So also you clarified the communication and you led to a greater point, and it was just fantastic. So when we do that, when we, in other words, do like you did, Donna, you were being impeccable in dealing with something, and you say, I can't kind of let this stand. If I let it stand, I'm being complicit in this we, us, and them kind of dichotomy mindset battle, and I don't wish to be complicit in that. Right?
Correct.
And that's huge. That's exactly what you did. Basically, in some way, you could say when I was saying we and them and us and them, that was kind of bullshit in a way, right? Just let's just say, just take that for right now. And so what you were doing, in essence, was dealing with it and saying, hey, I don't want to be complicit in that. Now, yes, in the way I was saying it, yes, it is bullshit in when you look at it from one perspective. Now, when I explain a little bit and more and understand, then we see the moreness, but it's just the problem of language. But it's powerful what you did, Donna. It's really awesome. So it's a nice example of how we actually can deal with bullshit in a nice, positive, capital D diplomacy way and deal so impeccably. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that I'm able to see the more of things automatically, and I can see how my perspective shifted after you kind of articulated some ways of how language operates. Yeah. And it's interesting that it can be very conventional, and then you have an awareness that that's not really the depth of the meaning of the word itself. Right. And then for me, I'm still trying to figure all that out. So it was very helpful for you to kind of clarify that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, pleasure. And that's the key, that's when we focus on understanding. There's always more that comes that we didn't expect because we're raising awareness. So when you go to right and wrong, all you end up is knowing what you already knew before. Right? It's like, okay, I'm right, and I'll prove that I'm right. Yeah, so what? I didn't learn anything. I want understanding. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah. Understanding is way more important. She just says, my tablet is acting up if I disappear, not because you're boring. Oh, okay, thanks. She says, so if you disappear, it's because your tablet is acting up. And okay, all right. I'm just teasing you a little bit. If you read that in one way, you're saying I am boring, but that's not why you're leaving. I understand what you mean, though. So that's the key point here. I'm teasing Shisha a little bit, but it's a powerful point to make, that the way we express ourselves, what we mean and what we say is not always the same thing. So when we realize this about communication and we focus on understanding, then we realize that there's a moreness to what we mean, and we're not always quite sure ourselves even what we mean, but we say anyway, and we kind of put it out there. And then if we focused on understanding, we can kind of work through the expression and clarify it and kind of figure it out and come to resolution. And eventually we get that clarity and that understanding. So we just have to have that bit of persistence when it comes to communication.
Basically, we're making the connection between the heart and the head and what comes out the mouth. So whatever's in our heart and we want to get it out, but our brain hasn't caught up to it, I guess. It hasn't been programmed to be in sync with it, maybe?
Yes.
Are you kind of saying that in a way?
Yes.
Learning new language or these new words.
Yes.
It's reprogramming the mind to connect with the heart. So when we do want to express the intent of our heart and our desires and these things, we can have the words to articulate.
Yes, exactly. Also, we are genius.
I'm just clarifying for myself.
Ryan, that clarity for yourself That is the takeaway. And it is absolutely critical and vital to do. When we feed back like that, even if you're expressing the same point, when you're saying, hey, this is how I understand it, you are making it your own. And that is huge. So it's absolutely essential to do what you're doing. Even if you're going over, I don't care if you hear the same point again. I love it because now I hear how Ryan understands it. And man, that always connects. It fires up my neurons and the brain. It's like, man, there's more. So it's profound. But the key point is when you did that, you are making the point your own. You are saying, hey, I want to make sure I have this fully connected. And also you're checking. It's a way to check yourself to say, this is the way I understand it. And basically by putting it out there, you get the rest of us to say, well, if we say, yeah, okay, wow, that's cool. Then you know that you have understood it according to how it's meant, right? And that's also very profound. So you are checking your ability to understand. And you are refining that and making it your own. So there's many things that take place. Plus, when you say it like that, you can commit to it because now you are making a statement of personal belief and viewpoint, right? And that, again, it's an emphasis which entrenches it in the brain and wires it in the brain. So you get to now have this as part of you going forward. Not something I said or something Donna said or Mary said. No, now it becomes Ryan's truth and Ryan's point of understanding. And that is huge. Because if we just listen to others and say, oh, I agree, it's still their point. You haven't changed.
Right. It's their truth. It's not mine. Right.
Yeah, it's like taking that breath before you say something and just being more mindful of the words you're choosing and how you're putting it out there.
Yes.
You know? And because I know my mouth is a lot faster than my brain sometimes.
Exactly.
You know?
and that breath, what do you call that breath, Ryan?
Yeah.
Power pause.
There you go. That's what we call it, the power pause. It is huge. Hello, Bina. Hello, Bina. Glad you could join us. That pause is huge. And Mary, we've been talking about this as part of the Wave Impeccability program, in our sessions with that. And one of the things that comes up, I mean, the power pause is one thing. But the other reason is that we do respond with the first thing that comes up. It's because we've got a program and a conditioning. Like when at school, the teacher asks a question and you put your hand up and the teacher looks at the one who puts their hand up first. And there's an implication. So I'm going to use this example to illustrate many things. There's an implication that the teacher's responding. You can see it in their body language. Oh, you're clever, good for responding quickly. You get rewarded, even though it's subtle. She doesn't specifically say, oh, you must be clever because you put your hand up, but it's implied. So we have this pressure on us to respond quickly because it's a conditioned thing that, well, we're supposed to. But why? All it means is that you're coming up with the first and the nearest thing, not the most appropriate, not the most sensible, not the most thoughtful. Rather, the teacher should have, if I was the teacher, I would say, have you thought it through? Have you really, or you just like one? So now when you say, have you really thought it through? Have you got, oh, okay. Now you're waiting for somebody who's then there's a pause and you let things, then the hands can come up. Very different logic. So we want to understand the underlying mechanism that causes us to respond quickly. And we can shift that internally to say, hey, I don't want to just be defaulting to this idea of responding quickly because the first and nearest thing, because I'm trying to respond quickly. That's my pressure. That's my conditioning. No, I want to shift it to responding thoughtfully and to respond with sensibility and to respond appropriately and so on and so forth. So that's where that pause, and it's only a few seconds really in real time.
Yeah. This has been my problem my entire life, being the last of 13 siblings.
Right.
And not ever like being paid attention to or heard because I was the last one. I was the baby. I knew nothing, in a big family. So it wasn't until I was an adult that all of a sudden they were like, oh, you're not like 10 anymore. And oh, you've got an opinion. You're alive. Who are you?
Yes. Yes. It's so magical, your story, Mary. It connects. Because the chapter is called Deep-Seated Causality. And so that pressure of you to say quickly it comes from being the deep-seated causality is being the last of 13 children, the youngest of 13, and that you had to respond quickly just basically to get anywhere. And because, your kids to get probably to get food even sometimes, you had to be quick,
just
right?
To be heard.
Right, just to be heard. So there was a very real practical reason for it in that situation, right? But now when we really look at our deep-seated causality, we can shift and say, hey, that's no longer appropriate. I'm not in that situation anymore. So I want to make this point. I want to use your story for a bigger point. It's to know that, and part of this book, I think it's in the introduction, it's that when it comes to learning, one of the most profound things we need to do is unlearn first.
Yep.
So this thing of responding quickly, it's a habit and a mindset that we have to unlearn. Yes, sometimes it's appropriate. Like when you were a kid, it was appropriate. But other times it's not. So we have to be aware of that. And we have to unlearn it and specifically replace it with what is appropriate and replace it with awareness and understanding and discernment.
Yeah, gotcha.
Exciting. That's why I love the Zoom, because it makes space. When you guys are here, it makes space for that stuff that bubbles up to just come out. And yes, in one way, it's not always directly connected, but it's always connected. There's always a connection somewhere. It's quite awesome. What you thinking, Ryan?
Soaking it in, really.
Yeah, that's what Shisha was saying as well.
Yeah. Sometimes, I naturally do the power pause on occasion when there's a lot of information being thrown at me. It takes me a while to kind of chew on it and meditate on it before I can understand it and then get something out of it. I guess I got to digest it. It takes me a while to digest.
Yeah. And it's important, and especially in what we do. The stuff that we're talking about, and like the book, and just in terms of the way we pick up, all the stuff that we deal with, because from my perspective, I like to come from the overview perspective and the looking at the overallness of everything and the deep fundamentals. So it's a lot because it all connects. It's like my background here. We're dealing all these points and they all connect. So there is this greater largeness, but we want that time to let it soak in, and so we can have all those connections connect together. So yeah, it is a big deal. So, and also just to be aware that the things that we are talking about, we are specifically coming from that overview, that connectivity, and so to have time for the connections to connect, very important.
What's neat about it is there is a time to just contemplate, chew on it, digest it, but then once you've assimilated it and it becomes part of you, now it all comes out. You know what I mean? And
it comes out, and the time is for application.
Right.
To put it into practice, to do, to use, to apply it. Because without application, it's all meaningless. Exactly. Right. So without application, it's all meaningless. Shisha says, figuring out what is obsolete. Yes, absolutely. And here's the key to come back to that. Why is that so important? There's a greater sensibility to unlearning. It's a necessary part of life. Why? Because if we start off and we get given a set of things to say, oh, here we go, here's a way of being that's kind of okay, it's good and it's nice and all this, right? It's sensibility. If we start with that, we might get stuck there because there's no real pressure on us to learn more. And also, when we get given something like that to start with, we might just accept it and not ever question it, and we're just doing it by default. It's not really something we've chosen for ourselves with deliberate conscious awareness, right? Therefore, it doesn't actually make it real. It's just somebody else's program, and we're living somebody else's life. However, when we get given all of this crap and nonsense and ridiculousness and convention and preposterousness and craziness, and we have to unlearn it, when we unlearn it, we have to replace it with something else. That act of replacement, which is now a conscious, deliberate choice. We have a choice between the nonsense and the goodness. We have a freedom. We can go back to what we had before. We can choose it or not. But now we have that freedom of choice on the full spectrum. And whatever we then choose is real. It's ours. It's what we are choosing in full conscious, deliberate awareness. We are creating and constructing and building a real self, not a conditioned programmed self. Even if that program is good, even if that conditioning is good, it's still conditioning. All of us here, I feel very confident to say, want to be real, true, free people that have chosen to be themselves deliberately. None of us want to be robots, right?
Right, yeah.
So, right. So figuring out, I'm sorry, Mary. I just want to make one quick point here. Then just hold your thought 1 second. So I'm trying to tie it all together. Shisha's comment of figuring out what is obsolete isn't just important from a dealing with nonsense point of view. It is profoundly important from a greaterness point of view, from making sense of life and becoming our real selves, and living in full conscious, deliberate awareness, and that's very transformative, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mary.
I find that the more that I learn along the way, I evolve into somebody new every day, every week. It just keeps growing into something else that's greater and more fulfilling for myself.
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't care. I could care less about some, people that really aren't a part of my small circle.
Why?
I could care less what they do or what their reactions are. But the small group of people that I have in my life, we all have that same goal of just wanting to be a better person and learning more every day.
Exactly. And it's to be that appropriateness and the development of awareness. That's a joy. And when you do that together, like we like to say, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 equals more. That's the magic of collaboration when we do this stuff together, that we get a moreness that comes out of it. It's not just 1 + 1 is 2. No, 1 + 1 becomes infinity. It's magical. It's really awesome. We get that moreness. What's the matter, Ryan? You look like you're kind of figuring something out.
There's just like images going through my head, like as you guys are talking. I'm just picturing like someone, like you're talking about figuring out what's obsolete, and this image in my head was of this person, and it could be yourself, and you have, I don't know why, but it was like all these arms growing out of you. They were, I'm just like,
no, it's huge. Share, it's powerful. This is magic.
Like all these arms growing out of you, but they were like black, and they were like death, and they were like cancerous. And I just pictured there's all these arms, and they're connecting. These arms are like long arms connecting you to all these relationships or things you're putting your energy into, and they're like connecting to you,
like
and
tentacles rather than arms.
Like tentacles, yeah, sucking the life out of you. And I just pictured grabbing like a big machete, and you're like hacking these freaking things, like
it's powerful. Ryan, what you're doing is really, really magically powerful. Visualization and imagining, and this kind of setting stuff in this visual way like that, and then taking that action. It is a profound way of clearing ourselves, and it's really powerful what you're saying.
Yeah, you could almost, if I was an artist, like I could paint
I'm listening. I'll be back a second.
I could paint a picture of this thing, of this person who's like, down, hunched over with all these tentacles attached, but like, and it's like a progressive picture where as they're hacking away at these tentacles, they like start to stand up taller and taller and straighter. And as soon as they hack off the last one, they're like standing upright, at attention, and they've become like their full, they've gained their full potential, but when they were connected with all these things that were draining them of their life energy, it wasn't allowing them to reach the potential that they could reach.
Yes.
So like you said, you have to hack away, and I use that word hack, like you have to chop and cut these things off from your life, or whatever it is, and when you become aware of it, just cut it off and don't like, even if you're emotionally attached to it and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to let go of that, just hack it off. You'll feel better. You know what I mean? And now, you know, and it's just like a weather balloon, you know, a weather balloon. If we're going to rise up, you know, to where we want to go, you have to release those bags.
Yes, that's the baggage. That's where baggage, you know, baggage.
Yeah, you got to dump the baggage. You got to let go of those things so you can go higher in that weather balloon. And when you go up and you're up high in the balloon, guess what? Now you can see. Now you have a clear picture and view and awareness. I'm just kind of connecting it with like some physical.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. This is really profound.
So guess what? It might be helpful to go take a ride in a hot air balloon. You see what I'm saying? Like just go and physically do it.
Elibia's, we've got a guest here, but she can hear Ryan, and she says she's done that. She's ridden in the hot air balloon, and it's very transformative. Yeah.
To physically do the action, it's helpful. And you know what I mean? It'll help you gain the perspective.
Oh, to have a visual, to have a concrete visualization, a real practical application, it's very, very important. So I want to pause 1 second here, Ryan. Shisha, Shisha says, I can see that as anime. Yeah. And I wanted you specifically to ask you, Shisha, if you take Ryan's anime, because that's really what it is, right? Because anime is so powerful, that word even, because it's the animation of kind of like the animal side in a way, you know, the rawness of us, right? That's what Ryan's talking about. And anime deals with this kind of stuff also to a large extent. So it's really powerful that you use that word. But you, Shisha, when you take Ryan's visualization of those tendrils, those tentacles that are emanating from us, that are connecting us to all sorts of nonsense, that are holding us down and that corrupt us, and you hack them all off. If you do that visualization, if you run that scene as you in the anime, it's you doing that, right? What does that do for you, Shisha? That's what I want to know. So I just want to hold the second for 1 second because there's a bit of a delay. Hello, Janelle. Brilliant. Magic. I'm so pleased to hear. Always happy when you join, Janelle. It's brilliant, man.
No, I'm just listening. I'm sorry.
I know, but I like to see you. I like to hear your voice. So, you know.
Hello, Janelle.
So
yeah, I got to leave at like 1:45 because my son has his first golf lesson.
Yes, magical. So, yes, hello. And Bina says hello too, by the way. I don't know if you heard there. So I just want to give a bit of pause here. I want to hear if that visualization for Shisha specifically has any kind of a change. For me, when I just ran through it real quick in my mind, and I'll go back to doing that visualization later again, but I could feel already that there was some power to it. And Shisha says, I can breathe more deeply.
Right.
Yes, that would result from that. Because when we constrained, when we connected, it does inhibit us. And one of the ways we can see it is in breathing mode. That's profound. That's really huge.
Yeah, it's all the negative energy coming at us.
Exactly.
And I believe all of these connections, they're thoughts. They're all in your head. So I believe that the reason why, just by imagining yourself cutting these negative things from you, that is healing you, because it's changing the way that you thought from before. Like literally you're believing, oh, I have the power to cut that and cut that. So literally just by thinking about doing it, you are doing it.
Yes. Simple. Very powerful. There's different ways to do and to apply. One of them is through an application. A profound application is simply the application of awareness and understanding. That is a doing. And that visualization is that kind of a doing, the doing of an application of awareness. Very powerful. very powerful. We think doing is just physical actions, but the physical is a representation of what's going on inside us, of the emotional, the spiritual, the psychological, the mental, everything. So that visualization, it's a profound doing. Like you said, just thinking about stuff is sometimes enough. Just thinking about stuff is being aware. It's the application of awareness, and it is massive in its transformation. Olivia said that we have to understand that like bullshit, it's a contagion. That's the word she used. And that we can be connected to stuff. And those tentacles, those tendrils, that connectivity, it's a connectivity to contagion. And that's what we're cutting off. We're saying, no more. It's obsolete. It's not necessary. It's not part of me anymore. I don't want to be connected to this. And on a deeper level, there's a profound understanding that we tend to assume that what we are is a product of just us. In other words, what I say, we sort of default to thinking, well, I'm saying it because it's me. So when I say some nonsense, we tend to default in claiming full responsibility for it. Now, yes, in one way we are, but in another way too, we are affected by those tentacles, that incoming corruption, that stuff that's obsolete. And so sometimes what comes out of us isn't actually us. It's a very big deal to understand. Now, this requires profound discernment and impeccability, because we can't just use that as an excuse to say when we are nincompoops and it is us, that we don't own it. But there are times that stuff comes out of us and nonsense that's coming via those tentacles that isn't us. It's like when somebody posts on your timeline and, they like posted as you, and like a hacker, well, you know what? That's not actually me. So we have to know this. And that's what those tentacles are. They're basically like hackers, of nonsense and corruption and contagion and all sorts of crap.
And I'll say, make one side note. Me and Sil, we're the only males in this little conversation. The rest of you are female. I believe that this. No, I'm just making. It's just an observation, but I'm just saying. Is a really important thing for you guys to do, because your thoughts. I've been married 10 years. I understand the differences between males and females and how we work and think. Your guys' thoughts are so powerful. They're so intense, and you got so much going on. When you use this visualization technique, like these types of things that just kind of came up naturally, you guys can do amazing things. I mean, my wife can do such amazing things with the power of her thoughts, and it makes me feel like stupid.
I hear you, Ryan. I very much, I worship women. I think they're just magical.
I completely agree with you.
I mean,
Ryan?
I might be.
Sorry, 1 second, Ryan. I didn't hear what Bina said. Say again, Bina. You're very soft, Bina.
Okay, I'm saying completely agree with you, Ryan. And when you were sharing your thoughts about visualization, I was actually thinking the same. That when we visualize something like in an animated way, we kind of take power over it, and we feel that it's just a simple thing. I can do whatever I want to do in my imagination with my imagination, so I can do things. So it is like making it a bit comical. The way you did that is really getting a power over it. Yes,
right. Exactly.
It makes it more playful. It's like more playful.
Exactly. Yes, of course.
And to use anime makes it adds a joyful element, adds a magical element to it. It's just fantastic.
Yeah. Yes. But all I was gonna say is, as a man, I realize my strengths are mainly just physical. Like I can physically, I can lift heavy stuff. I can punch something really hard.
I hear you.
It's not really a lot. It's not really that
much. Ryan, you bring up a powerful point that came up in discussion yesterday, and it's something that we may have talked about it before. I don't know, but it's something that comes up regularly. It's a very profound perspective that we like to share, and this particularly in the male-female context. When you look at a farmer and you say to him, "Hey, you look at your livestock." You say, which is more valuable? All right. The farmer's going to tell you, well, the females. I only need 1 or 2 males. You know, I don't need a lot of them. 50-50, most of the males are just superfluous. We don't really need them.
Right.
Now, but every single female is valuable, right? Now, in our psychology, we might not know this consciously, but subconsciously, we're aware of this. So all women have an intrinsic sense of value. Whereas guys know they're superfluous. You might even be the stud and the main guy, but you know what? A stud is easily replaceable. You are not indispensable. The number 2, number 3, whatever, it doesn't really matter that critically. So it's not a big deal. If the stud dies or gets killed or the lion eats the chief stud, well, okay, the number 2 becomes the main guy, and so what? It's not a big deal. So all males know they are superfluous.
You know what?
However, sorry, Ryan, there's a big point I want to make here. This is a really big deal. So when we understand this, that males inherently feel that they are superfluous, that they have no purpose, they have no value, it explains much of the bullshit in the world. Right? So to connect it to that. Furthermore, however though, what happens with guys when they are, and you can look at it in nature too, right? You see the young zebra males, and they're being jackasses, and they go and they prance around on the outskirts of the herd, and they go and kind of check out the lion, and they go as close as they can to the lion. They're being stupid. But what does that stupidity afford? It helps the whole herd, because when that jackass lion goes too far, goes just that little bit too close to the lion, you know exactly where that commitment line is. You know precisely where that boundary is.
Right.
Or like in when it comes to, say, the tree's fallen over the river, and the tribe has to cross the river, and it's in flood and all that. Who's the guy who goes and tests to see if the tree is safe? It's the jackass superfluous male, right? They go and take the risks, and through being jackasses and being risk and not being sensible, in other words, they show us where the boundaries are. So I just want to make this point, Ryan. Sorry, I'm going to come to you in 1 second. Just hold your thought. I want to make the point for guys to understand that they have value. They have value in being explorers. They have a value in being adventurers. They have value in testing limits. They have value in being knuckleheads. The program Jackass, Johnny Knoxville, the guy from the TV program Jackass. It was a program about jackassery. Mary knows the program. Right. But
my husband used to like to watch that.
Right. Mary, I saw an interview with him where he was, he was caught in a very sober moment where he was being very real. And he said, what else am I going to do? I am a jackass. I don't know what else to do. That's who I am. He said, but at least it maybe makes some people happy. It has some value. He deeply, intrinsically understood this thing about being a superfluous male, and he also understood that through jackassery, there's value. We get to see where the limits are. So I just want to say, yes, as superfluous as we actually are, we also serve a function. That's why there's 50-50 in nature. And it's not 10-90-10 or whatever. Why are they superfluous males? Because they serve a very powerful, valuable function. Right. Also, right, the males are the ones, the jackass males are on the outskirts of the tribe, running around the females and all that. Who gets eaten first? But I want guys to understand that they know this and they are willing to be eaten first. There's a profoundness to the underlying nobility and graciousness and concern, and they are willing to sacrifice themselves for everyone, right?
That's why
very important to understand. So even though, like that Johnny Knoxville, even though he, by his own recognition, is a total jackass, he's also profoundly noble and self-sacrificing. It's a very powerful understanding to balance this, to say, hey, you know what? Yes, guys are jackasses in general. It's their function. It's their purpose. But also, they are deeply caring. They are deeply considerate. They are willing to sacrifice themselves. It's a big deal. So I want superfluous guys to appreciate themselves more. That's my point.
Just a couple things that popped in my brain while you're talking.
Elivia says it goes to self-acceptance. That's the key thing. Sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
It's okay to do the jackass stuff as long as you don't involve the women with that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thanks, Ryan.
You be your jackass on the outside of the herd. Right. Exactly. Don't be bringing the woman into it. They know because they are precious. They are magical. They are where it's at.
If you bring the female into
that's inappropriate
that you're involved with, she will not like you.
No, and that's going to give you trouble. You do your jackassery on the outskirts, with your other jackass things on the exactly. So that's what. So what I'm delineating here. I'm bringing awareness and understanding to a very deep fundamental aspect, and also we are seeing that there is a value to bullshit. Bullshit presses the boundaries. It's jackassery, and when we understand this, man, it becomes profound, right?
So
it really puts things.
Smart guys take care of their lady, right? That's what
exactly. That's your function. Be aware of it.
You know what? It only took me 10 years to learn that. So
exactly. Right. But it's a balance. It's a balance. There's magic to all of it. So that's one aspect of it. Now we are sentient beings. And yes, our biology and male and female, it's a starting point. We don't have to get stuck there. We can develop and become sentient beings rather than becoming men and women. I personally, I can't really think of myself as a guy anymore. I truly can't. I, of course, can't think of myself as a woman either, but I can think of myself as a sentient being. That's how I truly conceive of myself. I can't identify with male or female anymore. It doesn't work for me. And same thing when I look at you guys, I don't see male or female. I just see sentient beings,
Well, because now you're identifying with some type of form.
Exactly. It's too limiting. It's too limiting.
You're more than that. Yeah.
Exactly. So but it's a good starting point though. And it's good to be aware that, hey, you know what? Yes, I have jackassery in me. And like you said, there is a time when it's appropriate. So it's understanding appropriateness, the magic of appropriateness, that, hey, use it when appropriate. Don't be a jackass and involve your woman, because that's inappropriate. And it's going to go against her deep instinctualness. And so now it might be that, she's also kind of thinking of things, and her awareness is in a different space to say, hey, you know what? You're not the only one who gets to have fun being a jackass. I can do it too, but it has to be her choice. You can't force it on her. So, and the same thing, we can develop that as males. We can say, you know what? That psychology, the magic of the female, hey, I can develop that also. It's not limited to biology. So that deeper understanding, that deeper connectivity, the feeling of stuff, and all the magic that is women typically, that's something that us as guys, we can connect to as well. So that's why we're interested in females. It's not just a sexual thing. There's more. It's this dichotomy of perspective. The differences allow for perspective shifting. If we were all just one sex, we wouldn't have this profoundness that forces us into this magical perspective shifting. So there's a magic to it.
It's like you want to gain understanding. Like you want, you want to understand more.
Understanding is awareness, right?
Like if you listen to your wife, or if your wife listens to you, like, you know what I mean? It has to go both ways. Like you're saying, you have to be equal in a partnership. Together,
right. Oh, I have to add something to my quote file while we're about it here. Just something that came out there. Understanding is useful awareness.
Right.
It's not just regular awareness. Right. It's useful awareness.
Right. Yep. Understanding.
That's why we want awareness, discernment, and understanding. But I just want to add that to my quote file. I like to do these things right away because you never remember them. So,
I'll say when I was going through a time of deep healing and stuff like that, and letting go of things, literally, I got a message from the angels or these higher beings, and they said, "We really appreciate it when you help your wife." And that's all they said. They just, that one, those little simple thing.
Wow.
That's part of the mission of humanity, or let's say men, like I see the next 30 years, 50 years, part of the mission of men is to learn how to serve women.
There you go.
Not in a way where we believe they're better than us.
No.
But it's releasing that ego and thinking that we are better. It's
exactly. Right. Right.
And
so
we're breaking. What?
Right. I just want to say, shift one key word there. It's men learning, you said, to serve women. Shift it rather to say to be of service to women.
Right.
Right. Because when you say of service, there's no hierarchy implied. When you say serve, it puts hierarchy into the picture, right?
Well, right. And
just a simple shift. But I'm just being really precise to use this as an opportunity to emphasize the value of precision when it comes to our words. So say again what you wanted to say. Men, it would be useful for men to become aware.
To become aware that they are here to be of service to women.
There you go. See how powerful that is now. Right. Now it shifts to be of service. Ah, right. Man, that's really profound. Because now hierarchy is not a part of it. To be of service to women, that's it. That's really profoundly changing. It's huge. That's huge. That's huge.
It's like the women have to come out from being a victim at the same time as the man has to come down
of being the bully, right?
From being the bully. So yes. we got to equal it out.
Yes.
Women need, but what's interesting is what I've seen in my experience, because I'm married and I've lived with a woman, 24/7 for 10 years. I've realized it starts with me.
Yes.
The men, this is very important. The man needs to be the leader, meaning we have to come down here in order to pick the woman up and bring her to where we are at.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
And I understand. What you're saying is not necessarily an inherent way things are. You're saying that this is the default, and that we are looking to undo and correct, and exactly what Shisha was pointing to, the obsolete, that idea of this hierarchy of men being there, it's an obsolete nonsense that we need to disconnect from and undo and unlearn. Yes.
This is a big deal because this is a huge part of our culture. Yeah. This is a huge part of the programming in the world. Male, female. I mean, you've seen the battle over these things, and the programming and all this stuff going on, and the fighting and like, I'm better, you're better, blah, 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 whatever.
And it's all bullshit. And we're going to come to that. The chapter on hierarchy and superiority paradigm, we're going to come there. So hold on to that, Ryan. Before we go into it too deeply, I do want to come back to where we're at. And the other thing I wanted to make a point here is, this is precisely the point and purpose of this book reading. It's not necessarily to just read the book and get what's in the book. No, it's what it leads to through discussion. Look at all the magic that we are connecting to that's stimulated by the reading of the book. So that to me is the greatness of why to do this. Because to just come up with these topics that we're discussing now, just sort of, on demand, it's pretty difficult. But when they get prompted and stimulated by something, it's magically profound. So it's just a huge deal, when we do this process, when we understand that if we have some kind of a focus and allow it to stimulate, stuff comes. It's fantastic.
I have an affinity for women, and I really appreciate women, and I like to help women. So one more thing for the women is, there's this programming for them to believe that there's this ideal picture of what a man should be, and it's false. It's not true. And that the guys who are nice, you don't like them. You don't like the guy that's really nice and wants to really help you out. So that's a part of the programming that needs to be done.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because these nice guys, these good guys, they actually are going to help you become who you want to be. You just have to get out of that ego where, but he's got to look like this, and he's got to be this tall, and he's got to have this much money and all this crap. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Ryan, from my point of view, as a sentient being, you're pretty ideal as a man. So, all right.
But that's how I know, because like I've been the biggest jackass, and I've thought.
I hear you. I hear you. You know, me too, Ryan. And you know, this is the thing, that when you really get guys, when they're honest, they will all tell you they are intimately aware of their profound jackassery.
Oh yeah.
They all know it. They all know it. You know. So I want to say something. You brought up a really powerful point, but now I forgot.
I did that yesterday. Don't worry.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
It'll happen.
Yeah. We're talking about the just the whole male female thing, and how, you know, we want to unhook from that really and move. Go ahead, Bina. I remember my point was about the ideal man and the ideal woman. That was the point. I'll come back to that in a minute. Go ahead, Bina.
No, I was just trying to remind you what you were saying.
Thank you. Right. So this conception of idealness, and particularly Ryan touched on a very profound point there, where he said, like, the bad boy, right? That there's not this connectivity to liking nice guys. Why? Where does that come from? What's the root of that? And why is it obsolete? That's the key point, because we're on a theme here now. We're on a theme of obsolete, assumed, assimilated concepts and beliefs.
I know.
Right. Okay, go ahead.
And this is just my perspective, but I think it was useful to be programmed to want the biggest, strongest, baddest male for survival purposes.
Exactly. When you look at the alpha male in a lion thing, the alpha male is actually the biggest shit. He's the biggest bully. He is. He's
caveman.
Right. But I mean, when you look at the alpha male, that typically what we call the alpha male, they are actually the biggest bullies, the biggest mean. They put down everybody. They believe in in other words, they are BMNs. Right. So, but that's the programming now. That's the connectivity, because our brainstem equates the alpha male, who's the best breeder, as being the idea, though. But it's also equated with being mean and being bad and all this crap, because that's the behavior that makes you the alpha male. They're not getting there because of being sensible, being sensitive, being intelligent, being thoughtful, being strategic. No, they're being there because they are just flat out bullies in essence, right? And they believe in hierarchy. And that's where that connectivity to the bad boy comes from in terms of attractiveness from a breeding point of view. However, Ryan, you got to understand too, if you look at this a little bit more deeply, and I don't know, maybe the ladies might disagree or not, I don't know, it's just my perspective here, that typically that the bad boy, they're good for sex and sex only, not for a relationship.
Well, procreation, right, for strong offspring.
Exactly. But it's also a false belief, though, because yes, in nature you want that aggression, that dominance, that meanness. In that environment, it's appropriate in a hierarchical environment. However, in a non-hierarchical environment, in a cooperative environment, it's not actually valuable from a breeding point of view.
Yes.
Right? You rather want the sensitive, strategic, thoughtful, intelligent, kind, considerate, somebody who can work together. And again, my point, I've made this point before, the most successful hunters in nature are not the lions or the tigers or the wolves or any of these apex predators that we think bears. No, it's the little African dog, the African wild dog, little small itty-bitty dogs. But they work as a team, as a pack. And they're tiny little things, but they are the most successful hunters because they work together. They collaborate. So in that society, it's the pressure there. It's on collaboration and not on dominance and hierarchy and all this nonsense. So when we understand that this is a legacy that's come about from a particular environment, it's not always appropriate. So now when you look at that, the bad boy becomes, oh, no, I certainly don't want to breed with him. No, thank you very much.
I'll say sex is, I think, changing too and shifting the way we look at it and view it.
Yes.
Because before it was like what you said, like an animalistic activity. Type of thing. But it doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
Right. Okay. And you know when that shift came? Bill Gates.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Why? Because Bill Gates was the first guy who was a total, absolute, undeniable nerd who became the richest guy in the world. He became apex, right? And that shifted from when Bill Gates became the richest and people accepted him, right, as being a nerd and successful. It started to change the perspective to say, well, you know what? Being a nerd is
more about the mind.
Right. It used to be being a nerd was the biggest insult. Today, to be called a nerd, it's like, man, I'm proud to be whatever. Okay, like Shisha might say, I'm an anime nerd. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm just using for example. Or, you know what, I'm an art nerd, or I'm a philosophy nerd. It's cool. It's cool. So being a nerd has shifted from being this gross put down insult to being a badge of honor, and started with Bill Gates. Bill Gates was the change of that. I watched it happen actually in real time. It was very profound. So now that difference, the bad boy, it's not so much, hey, I want to hook up with the bad boy no, I want to hook up with the nerd. Because the nerd is the one who's going to take care of my children. They're going to be sensitive. They're going to be kind. They're actually going to make money and be responsible and be loyal and all of this stuff. It shifted, and that is a massive, massive, profound shift in society. That's huge.
They're not going to try to take advantage or anything.
Exactly. The realization has started to say, hey, we finally are able to value the nerd as being the apex that you want to aspire, that you want to breed with. And not necessarily the wealthiest nerd, but the nerd that suits you particularly. And now it's a whole different ball game. It's not a hierarchical thing anymore. It's not just, oh, who's the biggest, the baddest, the strongest, the meanest, really. When you look at it, that like the top lion is the meanest and the nastiest and the most abusive. That's the one who becomes the chief lion. He's the worst, actually, not the best.
Yep.
So it's sad, because I see people too that have chosen, I'll call it quote unquote, the trophy wife.
Right.
Because it was all about the appearance, how they thought life should be.
Exactly.
And they have become the most unhappy people because it really wasn't about their relationship with each other.
Exactly. It was about image and appearance. And look at the next point it's a perfect segue. The next little subsection here, emptiness. That's exactly, they chose emptiness. And look at the quote, without heart, without genuineness, the dance of life is devoid of ecstasy and is reduced to chaotic sloppiness and indulgence.
Right.
Yep.
It ties directly into it. You choose emptiness.
I've seen it in my own family.
Why?
Because so many of us, and we've all done different things. I'll say I'm on the bottom rung of the ladder all the way.
Yes.
Not only in age, but stature in life because of things that have happened to me. And then I've got relatives that are living high off the hog, but they're so unhappy.
Exactly.
Because it became all about the stuff and, like I say, the appearance. And they when they see me, they're like, "Why are you always so happy?" Like they don't get it.
Because
they never even got it when I was married to my husband.
Right. You chose heart, not emptiness.
Yeah.
You know what's cool? You know what's cool? We're coming to a time where we're gonna get the best of both worlds. Because here's why. Because we actually, that is our true nature. Our true nature is abundance. When you realize who you are, and you're not going to receive abundance like the other greedy people received abundance, because it's not even going to be about that. Your intent and your motive, like you're being prepped to receive abundance because the meek and the humble and impeccable people, you know what we're going to do with all of that wealth and abundance? Oh my gosh. You know how good the world's going to get?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
See, and That's the magic that's about to happen.
No.
Yeah, that's very true, Ryan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can't say, oh, that's bad and evil and all that.
No.
You have to be like, no. It's a tool that people are using for evil.
Right. It's coming to understanding, which is using the awareness with discernment. It all connects together to make a valuable usefulness of it. So when we get to that greater understanding and we see how things work, it's really profound.
Now,
Ryan, I figure you got to go, so we're going to say bye because otherwise we'll keep you here.
Go play golf.
Fantastic, man. So Ryan, do me a favor, film it. And if you can, go, when you do it, but film it if you can.
I'm going to go next weekend on my birthday.
Right. Then we'll do the live together, but also record this with Bryce, with Pierce, and then we can, just valuable. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We're going to do a special thing with Ryan and the golf. Anyway, a long story, but anyway, I'm excited about that, man. I'm excited about that.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye,
Thanks,
man.
Ryan. Bye.
Thanks, Ryan. See you, man. Hey, Pierce. Bye-bye. Oh, sorry, Pierce. Was too quick. All right. That's fantastic point to go on to this, Mary, what you were saying about heart and emptiness. And let's go into this a little bit in this next section here. All right. So once we become aware of this void in the bullshitter, it becomes much easier to understand them. The bullshit is used initially to try and cover up this vacuum or to fill it, but this cannot ever be. One can't fill nothing with more nothing. They somehow fail to realize their bullshit is nothing but nothing. Now, let me reread that. We somehow fail to realize our bullshit is nothing but nothing. To honor Donna's point, right, Donna? Rather than saying they, let's just say we somehow fail to realize our bullshit is nothing but nothing. It's just a matter of degree. We also have to know, and we do use we, like look in the very next sentence, we do use we. It's just a matter of appropriateness. It's a tricky problem, Donna, and we'll talk about it some more, but I'm glad you brought that up because it's good to be aware of it. We also have to know and realize something else when it comes to that nothingness. It causes us to hate genuineness, happiness, goodness, and any positivity and realness of being in others. We hate true niceness and will try to destroy it because, by comparison, it exposes us and makes us look bad, actually proving our emptiness. Goodness thus reveals our badness, for we do engage in many bad behaviors. Our anti-goodness to disguise faults is a deep and root cause of much of our behavior. So, Donna, I'm not sure if you there right now. I assume so, but it's very profound when I shifted to saying they and to read it as we. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. I just the reason I use we in the book, or Olivia and I use we sometimes, and other times we do use they and they. It's just to not get into this idea that basically we are all bullshitters to this degree. Like I mentioned before, that when we first shared the book with some of our friends and they read it, they said, man, you wrote this, it's all about me, you're writing about me. They really felt that. Mary, I think you might have been one of them.
Yeah.
but it's not. And that's the thing. That's why there is that bit of separation because it's a matter of degree. And yes, it is a spectrum, but also, and we do have parts of it in ourselves, but we can't absolutely identify with that excess. And that's what we try to prevent, Donna.
I understand now.
Yeah. And because I feel badly for good people. They're the ones who think of themselves as BMNs when they're not. And the BMNs don't. So it kind of needs to flip-flop a little bit. But it was profound to read it, though. And I'm going to continue to do that in this reading, to read it from this point of our, because we now have firmly established that we know that we have this behavior in us. And sometimes it actually does even come out in excessive ways. Maybe not necessarily so much now anymore, but certainly in the past. Well, at least I speak from personal experience. And it may even now in the present. So to understand, though, that it's not that we are completely immersed in this bubble like some are, but that we have this capability. So I'm going to read it in that we and us. All right. So knowing this helps our understanding of of us, of how we are tremendously, especially when it comes to our completely self-defeating, illogical, and irrational behaviors, such as pulling down and trying to destroy the goodness of others. Others who are actually being nice and good to us. But so deep is this inner aversion to our own emptiness, and so convinced are we that we must be better than others, that we engage in these absurd self-defeating behaviors by distorting our perceptions when it comes to good and nice people. And all because of a severe misbelief. This misbelief of relative superiority. And that's what we've been talking about, right? It's relative superiority. So it's a profound misbelief. So we'll carry on a little bit because it's going to come clear in a second here. And the quote here, just to emphasize, without earnestness and sincerity, we're pathetic fools blown about by every fad and fancy. So to continue, whenever we feel put out, disgruntled, disturbed, or bothered for no particular reason, inner emptiness of some kind is often the cause. We can't be happy as a result of an unreality or a mistaken belief, or because of bullshit of some kind. When we feel this way, it's a good time to re-examine what we've come to believe and adopt. We don't always acquire these compromises consciously. Making that effort to come to awareness and discern our not so obvious beliefs is well worth the energy. The emptiness of the bullshitter serves as good motivation and insight. So really the point here is when we're feeling empty, we have to say, hey, in some way, I'm attaching myself to bullshit of some kind. And that's where we can look at and then realize it and then delete it as obsolete and then cut those tendrils, hack them off, as Ryan says. I like that visual and I like that conception. It's very, very profound. You were going to say, Mary?
Nothing.
Oh,
Mine's just thinking.
I thought you said something. No good. No good. All right. So quite a good test you've given me there, Donna, to shift the wording on the fly to read it, in the plural, to read it as inclusive. Very powerful. Very cool. Very useful. So thank you for that, Mary. Donna. Sorry. Okay. Our next section here is insecurity, and this is very powerful. Especially when we look today in our fantastic example of access. We see that profound insecurity manifested all the time. All right, so the quote here is, the root of the us against you mindsuck is to legitimize an indefensible personal illusion. It's dishonest. This is an unethical endeavor to make what's inappropriate and indulgent legitimate, all because of the unrelenting insistence on indulgence. All right. So this is, again, Donna, when we look at this here in terms of what you were saying, that this us against you mindsuck, it is a very big part of our book. And that's why I was so thrilled when you articulated it and that you brought it to awareness so forcefully, because it is there and language is problematic. But we really, in the book, want to unhook from this us against you mindsuck. That's what we call it. This us against you, that's what you were saying, them and we. It creates an us against you mindsuck. That is to encapsulate what I felt you were saying. That's exactly it right there. So I loved what you said. It's very, very profound on it. It's a huge deal. And that whole thing of us against you, it's a total mindsuck. And mind something else that rhymes with suck also. It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Yeah. Bullshitters as a whole might appear to be confident, outgoing, brash, or extroverted, but in actuality, they're deeply insecure. And some of us also are somewhat deeply insecure. It's not just bullshitting, right? Our insecurity permeates everything we do, everything we are. It's that very emptiness or incompetence or other shortcoming, many of them only in the perception of the bullshitter, which they're attempting to cover up and compensate for with their bullshit. That didn't read right. But basically we're saying here that they believe that they are empty, and it's not actually true. And they try to compensate for this perception of theirs. And that's problematic. It's a belief.
Yeah.
That insecurity is a belief.
It is a belief. It's part of the dynamic I grew up in. Was like really huge for me that way. It took me a long time to say I'm going to stand up for myself.
Nice.
That my opinions could be valued. It took me a long time to do that, being the last one.
Right.
And sometimes I still have issues with it, but I've gotten much better. And here I am. I'm not going to say how old, but I'm way too old to still feel that way.
Oh, it's okay. We all know that you're 110, Mary. It's fine. No problem,
No, but really, it's funny because I recognize it. And when it happens, I have to take that deep breath and say, hey, I'm not feeding into this.
Why?
Exactly. Because there are those in my life that would like for me to continue to just be that 10-year-old little kid still.
Why? And no, it's not appropriate. No, not appropriate.
No,
let me make a real shift here real quick, Mary. Just to elaborate on something. It's something we deal with in the Way of Impeccability program also. Just to look at our origins and to shift perspective in a very profound way. So I'm going to present a hypothetical to you. It's not a belief or anything. It's just a hypothetical. It's a mind exercise for perspective shifting. Very profound mind exercise. So just hypothetically, just for argument's sake, let's assume that when before you were born, you are out there in the void as a nothing, and as your soul or whatever, your deep self, or as the universe or whatever, and that at that point we're going to assume that you get to choose that the circumstances of your birth and where you wanted to start a new life for the purposes of learning and growth, right? We just take this as an assumption, as a hypothetical, that before we started this life, in a different kind of an awareness, we said, hey, I need to learn some stuff, very deep and profound stuff, and I want to go and live a physical life, and that I'm going to do this for the purposes of learning. These things that me personally in my greater self needs to learn. But yes, I know it, but I need the pressure to learn it because it's so entrenched in me or whatever the reason is. But okay, the point is that you get to choose the circumstances of your birth. Now we say, all right, Mary, in this scenario, in this hypothetical, this mind exercise, we're saying, Mary, you chose to be the youngest of 13. Why? What was in it for you?
It was a learning process for me. It has been my entire life because I was very shy and very quiet. I sat back and I listened to what everybody said, watched what everybody did, and figured out for myself, well, that doesn't work. That's not a bad idea. I cherry picked for myself who I wanted to be and what I wanted to be, watching the siblings grow up and their screw ups and their successes in life. So it was, it's been a good thing for me as well,
Right. So what you're saying though, if you look at the profoundness of it, you said, well, you were kind of shy and you didn't stand up for yourself. So by choosing to be the last of 13, you forced yourself to learn to be more assertive. Yes?
Yeah, I had to.
I had to. In other words, you forced yourself to learn.
It really wasn't I really didn't have a choice about it.
Exactly.
Because there were so many of us growing up I would have been lost in the crowd.
Exactly. That's the magic of the point that I'm trying to make here. When we take this on and we assume responsibility, full responsibility for this idea that we chose it, it shifts our perception. We get to realize, oh my goodness, let's say this is actually true. Then I put myself in a situation where I was forced to change and learn. Whereas, okay, I'm out there in the void in my greater awareness or wherever I'm at in that other reality. I don't have a pressure to do it because, well, I don't really need to. So I force myself. I know I need to change, but it's like, it's not worth the effort. However, when I've put myself in a situation when I'm forced to learn, now I learn. And that's magical, right? So that's really profound. So you not only were forced to be more assertive and stand up for yourself and to speak up, but you're also forced to have independence of being, right?
Yes.
Which is fantastic and it's profound. Not only that, because it was one of 13, not just one of 3 or 4 or 2, whatever. You also, because you can't always be piping up. There's just your the environment. Not everybody can get attention. It's inappropriate, right? So you're also forced to be thoughtful and to listen and to evaluate and to make you, discerning and introspective and just thoughtful and think about stuff and be more aware. Unbelievably, profoundly magical, this fantastic choice of yours to be the last of 13.
Yeah, well, I also, I'm very grateful that I had parents who they nurtured each individual as who they were and their better qualities.
Another profound lesson that you were forced to learn, that it's about specific discernment, that we can't just take things in general, that they treated each individually, even though it was a mass, right? So you learned to not just aggregate things and lump them together and take things as this, a wholeness like together, just to average things out. No, to be specific, to be precise. In other words, that is a profound lesson of discernment. That's exactly what discernment is, to look at things in themselves and precisely. Right. And she says, learning from the mistakes of others. It is what life is all about. That's why everyone else is us, and the value of them. We learn from the mistakes of others and they learn from our mistakes. Yes, exactly. But to shift that perspective, I'm just saying, and to say, when you take responsibility for saying, hey, you know what? I chose the circumstance of my birth. When we do that, it shifts us internally, even as an exercise. When we take responsibility for it, we make peace with it. We make peace with whatever.
Yeah, it took me a long time to see that.
Right.
Growing up, but I can look back at it now and be able to say, there was some huge value in it.
Right.
That I never thought growing up.
Exactly. And when you make that shift internally to say, you know what, maybe I did choose it deliberately. And when we take responsibility, say, okay, I'm going to take responsibility for choosing it deliberately. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. Internally, when we make that deliberation to say, I chose this, I chose that, I chose my circumstance for the reasons of learning. Now I'm at peace with it. And now it becomes profound, because then also by implication, you say, I chose it for a good reason, which also by implication says that, hey, there's a deeper self that is profoundly sensible and does things which are good, but not necessarily nice.
Right.
Yeah. Now, Shisha, I want to ask Shisha here, how does this idea, this mind exercise of the conception of choosing the circumstances of your birth deliberately, that you did so deliberately, how does that impact you? We have to wait a little bit for Shisha. But it's a very big deal. I think we've discussed this before, right, Donna?
Yes, we have.
It's a big deal. It's very transformative.
It's a very big deal. It switched me from victim to superpower.
Oh, I love to hear that. That's just it's massive. It's massive. It's massive.
It took a while, I'll tell you that. But yeah.
Right. And that's the thing, our habits, our misbeliefs, they can become entrenched, which is why dealing with habits, which is energy management, mood management, is such a profound deal. It's so, so, so key. And that's why we might have, let's just assume in this other reality, in the void that we're living in like, we gods, just for argument's sake, say, and we're living in eternity and we have all the power and everything's good. But we have no pressure to really learn and change, right? So, and habits, we have these centuries of habits or eternities or millennia. How do you change a habit like that? Well, you need profound pressure and you need to be in that immersion bubble. Now, when we start off and we put ourselves in an environment where that's the daily reality, you cannot absolutely escape the pressure of what's coming at you. And that's really profound. So then
I don't think you ever escape it either. To be humble about it, it still creeps in. I think it always will for those things that were really keen for me to learn. Right. I think it's just that ongoing, and that we're the process, like you always say. I can apply that now and see the meaning of that and the truth of that.
Right. Yeah, most magic. And she shall always truthfully, always. There's no other way. Again, when we express stuff and we communicate, how we listen, how we hear, it's not always what is actually being said. So it's very profound to say what you're at, and then to realize it's a starting point, and then from there we go. So she says, I see it as rationalizing BS. Now, I'm not sure you see which part as rationalizing BS, the idea of choosing the circumstances of your birth. I'm not saying that bullshit is a good thing in its own accord. I'm just saying that we can put ourselves in contact with it precisely to see it for what it is, to see bullshit as being something that is negative, is destructive, is a problem. Because we might, in a greater thing, have a bit of bullshit in us, and bullshit is no big deal. It's like in the start of the book where we said, well, it's just a bit of embellishment and it's exaggeration and blah, blah, blah. In other words, we then, in that context, rationalize it. So when we put ourselves directly where bullshit, we see the very real negative consequence of bullshit. We're forced to learn that, hey, we cannot actually rationalize bullshit, that we are forced to deal with it as this very profound reality that is one that is something that needs to change. And yes, and when we see it in its excess, we see that so clearly and obviously. But it's precisely to not rationalize the little bit when it's BS. You see, rather than bullshit, you said BS. You're making a very profound point here in a roundabout way. But it's precisely not to rationalize that bit of BS in ourselves. So when, this mind exercise to assume responsibility for our connectivity with bullshit, it's not to say bullshit is okay. No, it's not. But it's to say, hey, you know what? It's us that we have to deal with it in ourselves. All right, but we're not talking about the ones that are the bullshitters. We're talking about ourselves. Yeah, we don't want to let the creeps off the hook. I understand what you're saying. No, absolutely not. And that's the point of the book. That's the point we made a little earlier too. It's to develop that appropriate intolerance, and also to stand up for yourself, to not let them off the hook through that implied agreement when we don't stand up and say, hey, you know what, like Donna did. She wasn't saying hey, you're talking nonsense, or she didn't. She just said, for me personally, I can't resonate with this. So she wasn't letting us off the hook, but she wasn't being aggressive or contradictory or argumentative or anything. She just said her truth, and it was a profound truth, and that led to much greater truth. So I'm not sure what part, Shisha, that you think lets offenders off the hook. If we assume responsibility for the circumstances of our birth, we are just saying that, hey, you know what? I'm here to learn. Now, I'm going to learn through whatever the circumstances are of my birth. And part of the learning is exactly to not let the offenders off the hook. When you have that intimate acquaintance like you did, you said grew up with bullshitters, how can you possibly let them off the hook? That would be unethical. It would be unimpeccable. It would be dishonest. So you chose that. In from the mind exercise, it's precisely, to me, the value is to precisely come to exactly that point that you're making now, to not let them off the hook. How can you? You have too much of an intimate acquaintance with the actual destructiveness of it. Whereas, if you didn't have that intimate acquaintance of the circumstances of your birth, you might have been inclined to let them off the hook because, well, it's just like most people think, BS, it's just, people embellishing and exaggerating. It's no big deal. No, it's a very profound big deal. So this exercise, it's one of saying that you're taking responsibility for your choices to learn and precisely to come to awarenesses and understandings that we cannot let them off the hook. It's very magical. There's a bit of delay, so. Really powerful, really powerful. I mean, for me, Shisha, what you are expressing, it's kind of the same thing I'm saying, just from a different angle.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Exactly. And also to not let them off the hook. I think Shisha's a bit bothered by the idea that if we say I chose to be in the circumstances of my birth, that and to be connected to bullshitters, that it makes bullshitters okay, to rationalize bullshit.
That's how I'm feeling it too. Yeah,
right.
That's how I'm feeling. That's where they're mutually exclusive, and I don't think that's what you're saying at all. Right. It's within the context, and you added the context.
Right, but it's absolutely not that. It's not to say that bullshit is okay, and also not to say that bullshit is just someone else. It's to say it's not okay in me.
Right.
Why? And yeah, so we learn from it, and it doesn't let them off the hook because we're learning from it, and part of the learning is to say, hey, we have to stand up to it. We have to be firm about it, and we have to express our truth diplomatically. So we learn all sorts of magical stuff. So yeah, so no, absolutely not. In the idea, the concept was most decidedly not about rationalizing bullshit. No, absolutely not. It's just that, hey, part of our understanding of bullshit is so that we escape that trap of trying to rationalize it. No.
I do have situations where I'll see bullshit and I'll recognize it within myself or within another person, just circumstances. And I do find myself internalizing it because I do internalize a lot of things. And I'll choose, okay, I learned the lesson there, and I'll go through like the emotional side of it without feeling a need to actually portray it or act it out. And I don't know, for me, if I'm taking the easy way out sometimes, and that there's power in like literally saying what you're internalizing. I'm not sure why I sometimes do that, but I do. And I do know, I am aware that it's not fear-driven. That much I do know. I have no problem articulating it, but I do come up with a choice at times when people are presenting things that are bullshit, and I'll step back and I'll see it and I'll learn from it, but I do it all internally. And I don't feel the need to like walk the play with them.
Right. It's appropriateness of the circumstance. It depends on where it is. It depends on if you're not saying anything is going to now, embolden them or exacerbate it. So it's about appropriateness. So it's not always appropriate to say something. Sometimes it's just to learn the lesson. And it's like, it's not going to make any difference if you say something. You're not being complicit. You're not, condoning them or making them more.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's just about appropriateness. So yeah, sometimes
we ask myself that question in that time. At that time,
exactly.
Is it appropriate? Yeah, getting more used to those words and using that vocabulary more.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and that thing of asking, is this appropriate? Am I being appropriate? Just to get into the habit of asking that regularly, it's life changing. It's just fantastic. It makes everything different. Right. So, and that ties to Shisha's point. Absolutely, from an appropriateness point of view, there's no way we are going to let the creeps off the hook or condone them or rationalize the bullshit. Hell no. Absolutely no. We want to eliminate the bullshit and say it's not necessary. It's total nonsense. It's a mind suck. And yeah. Absolutely not. So.
Yeah, it's why I speak up with this person in my life who is the most egregious bullshitter I've ever known.
Wow.
And he's very hurtful to people that I care about.
Right.
So there have been moments where I can't keep my mouth closed anymore, and I just have to say, this is not right. It's not appropriate. Just stop, because I'm not going to listen to it.
There you go. So there's an appropriateness to you speaking up in that situation, because if you don't, then you become part and complicit to condoning it and saying, well, you know what, if I don't say anything, they take it to mean, well, it's okay. No,
right.
not.
They think it's acceptable behavior.
Exactly.
And they do it all the time.
Right.
And it's like, really, you've been married for 40 some odd years and you still behave like you're a kid.
Right.
And I just don't, I don't get the mindset or why you want to be so hurtful to people in your family.
And the key is that, yes, it's them and their relationship, but it's your friend and they involving you. If you don't speak up, then you inadvertently are being complicit to the abuse.
Right, exactly. And that's exactly how I feel.
So you Shisha, that's why I love your comments, because you always bring up stuff, profound stuff. You know, so this idea of rationalizing bullshit or letting the creeps off the hook and letting them get away, no, that's absolutely what we are. The whole book is exactly about not doing that. Very much so. It's very powerful. So that idea of taking responsibility for the circumstances of our birth, that's a whole different deal. That's actually us saying that we are not letting ourselves off the hook for our own stuff, because it's not just about others. I mean, others are us. So it's really in the huge universal point of view that we aren't letting ourselves off the hook for being a bullshitter. Because yes, in this incarnation, this particularness that we're in now, we only might have a little bit of bullshit, but we also in different incarnations might be that bullshitter. And because we are all, everyone is the allness together, we are also those bullshitters. So we cannot let them off the hook, because that would be letting ourselves off the hook, and we can't do that. So yeah, so when we assume this responsibility of the circumstances of our birth, it's just about shifting perspective to say, I'm in it for the learning. And one of the things to learn is not to let bullshitters off the hook. Very powerful. Very, very powerful. So I know it may have sounded like that in one way, Shisha, but that's really not the intent. The intent is exactly to not let things off the hook and to develop that appropriate intolerance. Because out there in our deep self, we have we're trying to be good, we're trying to learn, we're trying to be good people, we are good people. And part of being a good person is to be tolerant, to be profoundly tolerant. And we tend to see tolerance as being an absolute. But there are times when it is appropriate to be intolerant. And precisely when it comes to the little bits of bullshit, not the extreme, egregious things, those are easy to stand up to, but it's those little bits, that's when we need to be intolerant also. So it's huge. So thank you, Shisha. It's huge. I really hope at some point you'll come join us on the Zoom, because, with the delay, it makes the discussion difficult. And also, with typing, we don't express ourselves as fully. But when we hear, like Olivia was saying, by the way, Mary, she loves hearing your voice. She gets to hear the fullness of Mary that doesn't come through in typing. So it's really profound. So it's a really, really big deal.
Thank you.
It's very cool. It's very cool. We get to hear more. So we love it. We love it. All right. So let's read a little bit more, because we kind of, coming to our end time here. We I don't want to we can go do this all day, but, we have to be mindful.
It's your birthday.
say again.
It's your birthday. You can't be on all day.
To me, that doesn't matter at all. As a matter of fact, as a real birthday present, it would be to do this all day. That would be fun. That would be. I'm going to be doing this all day. At 1:00, we have a workshop, and 8 people coming, so a little larger than usually. It's like 2 or 3 or maybe 1 even. But so this is 8 people, so that's pretty cool. So that's going to be the whole day pretty much there.
Happy birthday. I didn't know that.
Thank you. It's a very happy birthday. Yes, I know. This is what makes me happy, learning and growing and discussing and connecting, and especially to resolve things where there is misunderstanding, or where we come at it from a different perspective and we get that resolution. Like in the point that Donna brought up, it came to be resolved, and that was huge. The point that Shisha brought up, and at least for me, I feel it's somewhat resolved, and that's the magic gift for me. That is what really, really makes me truly happy, is that coming to resolution. Man alive, it's just huge, so big deal. Okay, so we're talking about insecurity. This deep insecurity causes us to easily feel put upon by those with strong characters. especially if those characters are independent of influence and convention. Standalone people are a significant threat to the bullshitter because they have no pressure points. They can't be leveraged or manipulated. And they also see through bullshit and feel free to say so.
Yeah.
I know, Shisha. I hear you. It is, and Shisha says I can't. It would be too emotionally exhausting. Yes, it is a big deal. That's why I'm mindful of the time and why I kind of said 2 hours and try to stick to that, because we found 2 hours is kind of typically the time where we start to run out of that energy. So yes, yes, I'm in the habit of doing it. So okay, I've kind of learned and can do it for longer, but I have to be very mindful of that. That's why I do try to do that. In our workshops as well, if we run overtime sometimes and we keep going too long, it actually negates all of the value that came because we run out of energy. And when we run out of energy, then the association becomes completely negative. So where are we in the chapter here? Okay, I tell you what, I think that's a good point to just stop on this point of insecurity. We'll just pick this right up because it's kind of got a bit more to go to it, and we'll just continue next week. And again, the reading is not necessarily about finishing the book or anything. It's about the stimulation it presents and about the stuff that comes up. That's what we say in the workshop, so people take notes. The first thing we say to them, take notes not necessarily about what we say. No, take notes about what comes up inside you. Look at all the stuff that came up inside you guys that was so magically profound, that connected to so much more. Just magical. So that stuff that comes up, that's what we want to hear. That's the magic, right?
Right.
Yep.
Magical. So thank you, Shisha, and I hope you come join us on Zoom at some point. It would be really awesome to hear you and to have that connectivity. Even if you don't say a lot, it doesn't matter. Look at Donna. She hardly said anything, but when she said something, it was magical. It's about the pressure that comes up inside us, that appropriateness, right? Donna, you're listening, you're there, but that's why I like to have you here, because when something does come that needs saying, you say it, and that's important. So very magical, very magical. So okay, so we'll just remember we are on insecurity, and we'll leave it there, and we'll wrap it up for today. And you know what? Maybe going forward, yes, thank you, Shisha. Thank you very much. I love it that you're here, and I truly hope you can join us on Zoom. We might do this more regularly, because it doesn't matter where we do in the book, but as time comes up, I'll just post it and say, hey, we can have these, a bit more on an impromptu basis. Because it's about stimulation and just having these chats. So thank you, Donna. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
My heart's
Thanks,
so full, man. What awesomeness, It's brilliant birthday. So thank you. All right. So let me get out of this and end meeting. End meeting for all. There we